Hello. It's so good to be together. It's so nice to see you, Wanda. And Veronica, we're so happy that you could join us today. So I'm introducing my friend Veronica. Veronica Love is the CEO of Newfield Network, which we've mentioned and we've talked to different people in the course of this series, the Raw Conversation series. Newfield is the school where Wanda and I both received our coach training and where our lives were changed in many ways. Veronica is very closely involved, obviously, with that school, including a course on somatics, on the body as part of our coaching practice that I was privileged to take last year, and I love, and we're going to get to that too. In addition, Veronica is a brilliant artist who is brings incredible insight into her canvases with my particular favorite are her beautiful portraits of other humans. And so we're going to talk about that today too. And so we're going to kick it off where we usually start when we're meeting somebody new. We often ask people how did they get into this work or how did they discover this work? And we know for you that's a different path than some of the people we've talked about. So when did this work become your own?
Hmm, that's a beautiful question. Well, a couple things show up when you ask that question. One is a sense of what is our sense of self and what is our sense of our own. Um, so I can, yeah, many ways to answer that. On the one hand, I feel this work isn't about an individual self. It is so much about the collective and recognizing how the whole collective, coheres um, in a particular way appearing as individuals, right? So that's so much part of the ontological work is to reflect and question and inquire into our own sense of self and what is that and how does that grow up over time and how does that shift in different contexts and circumstances. I'm giving you a very long answer to your question.
Okay, we're
um,
there for it.
and then, so that on the one hand, which is very clear that this work is a weaving of so many wise people coming together to create and deepen and expand the ontological work. And it's a constant evolution and unfolding. So on that's on one side. On the other side, in a more traditional answer in terms of my own, I find that there is an embodiment practice of having something come through one in a particular way, that whenever that happens there is a particular flavor and texture that is one's own signature. And I think that that also happens as each person comes into the ontological work and really takes the time to digest it and to assimilate it and then to offer it back into the world in service. So for me, I tackle many domains. And so, on the one hand, I feel like the ontological work with business and how I've really worked with the organization has happened for the last 14 years. And so, for me, that was an area in which the ontological work really came alive, and I got to see the extreme power of how to be in an organization having the ontological distinctions that we teach in our program.
Mm.
Another area for me, I think, is the somatic work. That's something that I have a deep passion for and background in. I'm an acupuncturist. I, was a yoga trainer and all sorts of different things. I dance a lot, so that whole background came in. And then, lastly, just as you mentioned, the art. So there's lots of ways that it has become my own, and I can't remember like one specific moment when it happened, but rather this kind of ongoing deepening process.
It's beautiful. Yeah, the somatic piece is so interesting to me because um, you and I have discussed this, but I had the opposite background. I lived from my chin up, ignoring any information, body information, and so when I took your class last year and studying with you, and then just conversation about this missing domain for me. And so it's always fascinating to me that that domain was not missing for you. and that gave you the gift of giving it to me and giving it to others. But I think we all fall on some sort of a spectrum in our partnership with our own body, in our partnership with our own being. And the, what are the opportunities, do you think, for people who maybe aren't sure where to start with understanding the body as a domain of learning?
Hmm. Well, I think that really depends on where they are in their phase of life, what challenge or dreams they're having in any given moment, and what is their network of support. So I think that's going to be specific to each person. Um, yeah, with where they are. With that said, I think even beginning to hold this notion of questioning what is my relationship with my body just as an invitation to explore can begin to open up doors with, oh, right, what is my relationship to my body? Some people really dislike their body. I mean, there's so many different narratives that people fall into around body. And one of the beautiful things I think about the Applied Somatics coaching certification program is that there is ample time to open up that question and unpack it and to begin to investigate what is my default way of inhabiting my body and of orienting to my body. And in recognizing those patterns and in seeing the way in which I connect with my body, I think is usually a very strong first step.
I love that. Just holding the question, just
Mm-hmm.
beginning to dance with that question of, well, what do I believe? For what have I told? What have I accepted? What story? Yeah, that's interesting. That's very interesting. So you talked about the course, and that's a relatively new offering that started last year. But you've been involved in the ongoing courses at Newfield for quite some time. So in your experience, what is your favorite thing? Haha, I'm making you pick one favorite thing. What is your favorite thing? I know how much you're going to love that question. Your favorite thing about being present in those courses, about working with all the people who've gone through.
Yeah. Gosh, that is an extraordinarily challenging question. I will say that, Wanda, to you and to Jennifer, that we did a closing conference. And so I was just steeped for 3 days with this beautiful cohort that had just gone through our 9-month program. And it was so powerful to see people go through a transformative process where, in the end, the amount of gratitude and hope and inspiration and agency that is just coursing through these people leaves me just like gaga. My heart is just so expanded in their presence, and to see, to think about the future and all of that ripple effect that this personal journey, right, of transformation and development, then like the seeds to what begins to go out into the world. So I think that's like a really big encompassing way of saying the whole all of it, right? Like the whole thing is, it's so magnificent. I mean, I it's hard to imagine something more beautiful, honestly, than to see somebody just so who's done so much work in a collective environment. I just think it goes it's so special in today's world, to learn how to be in an environment with people that are different backgrounds, different cultures, different professions, different ages, genders, like all, it's so much diversity. And to see the beauty in these people just caring so deeply for each other and for the goodness that they bring to the world, and seeing that level of support, it's just, it's very inspirational. I mean, it is so deeply moving and profound. And I sometimes sense that unless you taste it, unless you go through it, like it's almost hard to believe it's even possible.
Mhm.
is my experience. I mean, time and time again, grads say to us, "Oh my God, I didn't know what I was getting into. I had no idea." And even though it's like the
Yeah.
words fall short of the lived experience. Yeah.
I know Newfield has a brand new Instagram presence, and I went to look, and there was a post of video snippets of people talking about it, and there was one man who was saying, "Oh, this was more than I even could have expected," and it resonated so deeply because even though I kind of knew what I was doing there. And I had friends who in my cohort who didn't even I had one person ask me the Sunday before we started, "So what is this thing?" Like what? But it had some clue, but you still can't know. And to see him say that was like very resonant for me. Like, oh yeah, that's a thing. It's absolutely a thing. So I congratulations on tricking me by answering the question. The one thing I love is everything. That was very well done. Very well done. Wanda, what do you want to know? What
Yeah.
do you want to hear?
Yeah. I like to just go back into the beginning again and how, like Jennifer asked, like how did you know, right? Like when okay, so I met you in 2005 when I first did Newfield. And my goodness, I fell in love with the program. Like you said, it's very unique. Um, we get, to do the work ourselves internally. And I was thinking about you today. It's like, what kind of questions are we going to ask, like besides the professional questions? Um, but on a personal level, like your father, like Julio Lela, he's the founder, right, of Newfield. What was it like growing up with him and even, being introduced to this work? Like, were you introduced to it like at a very, very young age, or did you come in the beginning of Newfield, like that way? Yeah, I'm just curious. Like, how did you know,
What
get
happened?
get involved and evolve, to be now the CEO, right, of Newfield. And I get to see a different way of being, like, even though it's the same program, same distinctions, um, but you're bringing like a different flavor, like a different color to it
Yes.
as well,
Yeah.
but keeping it grounded in the distinctions. So,
Yeah, absolutely. This work is definitely a legacy work. And you asked, I listened to several questions in your question,
yes,
but
yeah.
the first one around Julio being my father,
Yeah.
that's all I know. So it's, I can't really compare it to other fathers per se, but I did, I remember early on, like when I was very little, like sitting on his lap and reading Humberto Maturana's book, right? So I remember those moments, and I would go to conferences in San Francisco and other places, and see what was happening from a very early age. And I remember really seeing how in the conferences, like, people were different, right? There was a sense of adults actually questioning and learning and being engaged with life in a different way.
Hmm.
And that was very what's the word I want? Impactful. That it had an impact on me to see that there are certain environments in which people blossom differently. And so being exposed to those kinds of fields of learning was very moving. And I think that was like where the inkling kind of woke up in me about, oh, there's something really beautiful here, where it's not like regular life in a way where people kind of humdrum and go to buy their things and it's very there was something different. And I didn't have the words for it when I was young, but I definitely experienced it from a very young age. And I also traveled so much, um, since I was very young. So I was, we went to Morocco and Spain and all through Latin America and Australia. And, I traveled a lot. So I saw many different cultures and peoples and ways of living and ways of speaking into life. So all of that impacted me from since I was young.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, so that's a little bit. I don't know if that gets to the heart of that first question.
Yes. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, my father is like any human.
Yeah.
So he has his brilliance and his light and the challenging parts that we have as well. And, there's that fullness of being alive and awake to that as well.
Mm.
Um, and I've learned so much from him. I mean, just an extraordinary amount. Being in his presence, being able to witness him. I mean, we co-led for about 20 years together.
Mm.
So I definitely learned in being steeped in the work side by side with him
Mm.
for all those years. And that's an extraordinary experience that I don't think many people have.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah.
so yeah, that's been very powerful.
Mm.
He told me one time, I'm not perfect. I know. I live in here. And I thought that was such a great way of expressing it. Yep, we all
Yeah,
know we're
absolutely.
not perfect. We live in here.
Yeah. I think I think, I mean, a lot of people are not familiar with like ontological coaching, right? Like working with the way of being of, of the human being. And um, I think this work, as coaches, like people may look at us like we got everything together, right? But it's not necessarily um, real, right?
Mhm.
Because this work is so deep, like it's depth in like coaching, to the human soul. And we, excuse me, like I've had to experience what I was learning, right?
Mhm.
Hmm.
The transformation in that, the challenges that would come up, and for me to reflect on, to work on myself. And that's the only way for me to relate to anyone else, right? To be able to work with a client. And
Well, I think that's very important, recognizing do we have golden shadows around someone? Do we deem someone just beyond any challenge or right? And to reflect on, oh, right, what are those qualities that we admire in another human and where are they in our own being? And what are the qualities in a human that maybe we don't admire and where are they in our own being? So
mm-hmm,
this practice of really cultivating ourself, I think is at the heart of the ontological work. And for me, it's really is how are we living in integrity in our life?
mm,
Where are we really practicing? It's one of my mentors would always say, there'll be another breakdown. Promise you,
yeah,
it's just around the corner.
yeah,
Life presents
yeah,
challenges over and over again, and it's how are we being with them? Are we being compassionate with our own selves?
mm,
Are we practicing taking multiple perspectives and seeing things from another lens, from another view, so
mm,
that we can really expand our own, right? So, all of these practices that we can put into place in our own lives, I think it's something that we need to ongoingly be doing.
mhm,
Um, and I think it's through that we learn, number one, because I think that one of the main aspects for me in life is that it's an opportunity to learn,
mhm,
which means that we don't know over and over again in different aspects. There may be a new facet or a new nuance that we can refine or that we can open up into. Um, so there's just so much richness. And I think when we're really recognizing our own humanity and the humanity of the people that we're engaging with, I think that's where powerful ways of engaging and collaborating with each other really come to fruition.
mhm. Yeah. And
That's something I loved about the program was that we spent half of our time in training just experiencing it, just understanding the philosophical underpinnings in a in a very real way, and then asking the question. So now that we understand that at least a little bit, what does it look like to bring that to other people? Um, so often I see coach training being, here's how you do it, here's all the tips and tricks.
mm,
And I've always been really grateful that I didn't participate in a program like that because the lather, rinse, repeat. Like
Hmm.
you said, there's always another breakdown. At
Hmm.
least I have some sense of, oh, how am I gonna deal with this thing? How am I gonna receive this new thing into my life? Because it just keeps happening. And I think our clients need to understand that too, that this is practice and
Yes.
uh,
Yeah.
it brings solutions. It grows your resilience, it grows your courage, it grows your strength so that you can face the next thing. It doesn't make the things stop coming. As a matter of
No.
fact, I feel as if you build your capacity, bigger things show up.
Yeah.
You're rewarded by bigger challenges. Yay! But you're
Well,
more ready.
yeah, exactly. I think that, there's often the sense in, you know, culture around, how do I want to articulate this? It's a sense of, yes, if I'm a leader, there's kind of this, pedestal. Oh, someone's a leader and they just get to call the shots and do what they want to do, and right. And there's often a lack of recognizing that, well, when you're a leader, there is so many components to that. And by leader, I mean anyone living their
Right.
life, right? And being
Right.
awake to the fact that they're living their life of, well, how are we handling challenges? How are we handling hard conversations? How are we facing the unexpected?
Mm.
Um, because things pop up, right? And when we're being a leader, we're being responsible. We're responding to life with as much awareness and consciousness as we can bring to any given situation. And I think that as we expand our own, as you were saying, bandwidth, our way of being, then we can take on more. We can take on being responsible for more, being of greater service to the world, being present more, and then that has a greater impact. But it also means that we're in that place of really working, right? Really working with
Hmm.
whatever it is that we're meeting, as well as obviously envisioning and creating, right, fantastic ideas. And but so there's that practice of how big are we showing up in life, um, and how are we being with life? I mean, it's just such a beautiful question. Are we shying away? Are we avoiding? Are we,
Hmm.
hiding in the corner? Are we like, oh, so, and all of that, like we're human, so we have flavors of all of it.
Hmm.
But how do we really embrace all those different dimensions of being alive?
When it goes back to the collective, whether that's a collective of two, a partnership with a coach, or a collective of an environment like a Newfield course, or um, being in community. And I think right now there's a whole conversation to be had about how our notions, our cultural notions of community are shifting so drastically. Um, but our need is not. Our need for community, our need for the collective. So yeah, that's an interesting conversation to be had too.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to talk a little bit about your artwork, because I know that that's one of the expressions of the work. So tell us a little bit about what you love to create.
Oh my goodness. Well, I started doing art as a place, a sanctuary for myself. In terms of I was, I was in this role of CEO. It's a big job, and I uh, wanted a place for really connecting with myself and for really being able to tap into my own being, and it's a place to also restore. And so that's where I really had this practice of coming back to art over and over again. And what I love about art is that there's a way in which it can invite us to be in extraordinary presence with ourselves. And there's something so delicious about being really attentive to the way we're able to make a mark and the way that we're able to witness and see and to perceive whatever it is we're perceiving. So what I love about art is that it's almost like you have I like this kaleidoscope metaphor. You have a kaleidoscope and you can kind of, you know, put it in a particular mode where you can see in a specific way, and then that alters how you engage, which is very, very much our ontological work, but it's doing it through the medium of art. So, are you focused on colors and color shifts? Are you focused on mark making? Are you focused on the line? Are you focused on value, right? Whatever the lens is. And so you can look at one object or one thing and begin to play with it in all these different ways.
Mm.
And ultimately, there's a way in which we can drop into really deeply seeing to come into a relationship with that which we are seeing. So rather than reinforcing the kind of modern myth of our separation and our alienation, it provides a way in which we can really be in reciprocity with and ultimately in oneness with whatever it is that we're seeing. So
Mm.
there's a way in which we can connect to life in this way that is very awake and rich. So I love oil painting. I love charcoal. I love mixed media. I love to do. I love portraits. I love figurative work and abstraction. To really invite the viewer. So once the piece is complete, to really invite the viewer to see another human being in their fullness of depth. I think very often we assume people are almost like objects, like, oh, that person that's just in my way in traffic, or that person that's like cut me off in line. There's a way in which we separate ourselves from other people. But my art ideally is an invitation to see another human and to recognize that that human has lived experience and history and culture and emotions and thoughts and depth and all of this. And so when we connect with each other from this place of depth, I think it again ultimately allows for more compassion.
Mm.
Um, I'll share this brief vignette. My daughter, we were driving in the car with her, and all of a sudden she said, "Oh my gosh, everyone that's driving is having their own thoughts right now."
Mm.
Right? It was this moment of like, oh my gosh, like, oh, like each person, and yes, like, and I was so taken aback. She, I think at that time was in her like young teenager. But I think often as adults, we even forget that, right? That this person is, who knows why they're, up against you in traffic, or is there an emergency that they're trying to get to? Is there, like, so just the simple sense of cultivating kindness and an awareness of another human being's experience.
Mm.
Do you know there's actually a word for that?
Oh, is it in the obscure dictionary, the
Well,
dictionary of
it sort of is.
obscurity?
It's the word sonder,
Yes.
Sondr.
Thank you so
The
much.
realization that other people. I love that she came to that. Oh my gosh, all these people, and that rushing in when you have an aha moment like and it rushes in on you. Like I can feel the breathlessness of that realization that everybody on the highway isn't just it's not just a metal box over there. There's a human in it, and that human has a life.
Yes.
And I had a similar experience. I went to a concert. There were 60,000 people, and I started to feel really sad. And I realized it was because I was never going to know any of the 60. I was, there was 60,000 people, and I was never going to meet them, even though we all had this concert in common. So that was the opposite sort of reaction to that. But I love what you're saying about portraiture giving us that opportunity to look more deeply. So you could either take an image of a human and objectify them by making them into an image, or you can give a window. And I feel
Mhm.
like your artwork definitely gives a window. So if somebody wanted to see some of these extraordinary artworks, where would they look?
So I do have a website. It's my name, so it's Veronica Love. That's my website, veronicalove.net.
Okay.
And I also am on Instagram, Veronica Love Art. So all of
It's
those
just
are
not fair to talk about art and not let people go see it.
right. Let me just
It's
remind them.
just
Yeah.
very, very unsatisfying. So thank you for that.
And
Yeah.
I have a question too. It's a personal
Mm.
question, like
Sure, Wanda.
for myself. Um, I don't call myself an artist because I don't like even though I do love drawing and I think I've done some great work, different like sculptures or not so much painting. Um, And I've been like this like all my life. It's like a hobby. And I will get into my artwork and then I'll drop it. And then years will go by. Okay. So now I'm at a stage where I'm craving to do it. Okay. But I cannot, um, I don't know if it's commit to time or like set a time. It's just it's in me to want to do it, but like life is I'm letting life get in the way. Like I'm taking responsibility in that. You know, I can't say I don't know what's getting in the way. I'm letting life get in the way. But how can I get back in to that love, right? That feeling that, because Jennifer, you're an artist as well, right? Like you've been
Yeah.
sharing, and yeah. So I'm just curious what you gotta say about that, Rob.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is such a fantastic question we can ask ourselves, um, to, to begin to reflect with what is it that prevents me from stepping into that practice or that space? What is it that keeps me back? And
Mm.
exploring, what is my commitment to, to examining that? What does that bring me? What is life with art? What is life without art?
Now that those two questions are more meaningful to me than the other ones, the commitment ones, because commitment ones is like, like there's resistance,
Sure,
right?
sure.
But what
Yeah.
you just asked, with that question, like what is art? What is life without art?
Well, I think there's something so vital about creativity and expression and allowing life to flow through us.
Mm.
For me, one of the things that I love about art, whether it's visual art and I also write poetry, um, for me, it's also just a practice of tremendous surrender
Mhm.
of self, kind of going back to that very first question that Jennifer asked around, make it your own kind of a thing. Um, because for me, there is a way in which art comes through. It's not necessarily that I own it or that, and at the same time, there is so much. Ways in which it's so deeply nourishing. And I notice that when I am engaging in art, whether that's the art of conversation, the
Mm.
art of existence and life, the art of seeing and observing, the art of sensing and feeling, like
Mhm.
all of these art forms, where we can have that pulse of life and really be connected to it. I think
Mhm.
in today's world, with so much media and so much speed, that there's a deadening and a separation
Mhm.
that begins to happen, right? It's like it hurts our nervous system when there's just so much. And so for me, good art does exactly the opposite. It wakes us up, it can soothe us, it can provoke us into a question or an inquiry or wonderment. There's a way in which art invites really great conversation and questions.
Mhm.
So the, to me, the art is a way of living. It's a practice, and I realize that when I've done my own practice, when I've gone into my studio, or I'm writing poetry, or I'm dancing, then when I meet Wanda, when I talk with Jennifer, I'm so much more with
Mm.
the human I'm engaging with. It's a completely different relationship.
Mm.
And so that nourishing of how we're relating to each other is is infused with the cycle of art and the art creativity and all of that. Yeah.
I've been using it to process places. So I've been doing watercolors recently of places I've been. So and
Mm.
now I'm going to places and I'm looking for the painting, because it's a way of processing what is the distillation of this moment. And so yeah, process makes so much sense. Processing, presence and processing. Um, I love that. Thank
Mm.
you. Thank you. So what should we be aware of that Newfield is offering right now? What do you want to direct people towards anything
Yeah.
coming up for Newfield?
Sure. Gosh, there's so much going on in Newfield right now. I just feel like we're
And I
thriving
should
in
let
so
you
many
know
ways.
to that we only have like 2 minutes.
No. Yeah.
Okay, okay, I'll
Let me ask
condense it
you
so
a
much.
giant question and give you 2 minutes to answer it.
Let's see. So, yes, so we have our signature coach training program that is a 9-month program for people who want to really embody and understand the ontological coaching. As Jennifer mentioned, first half is all about your own life, and then how to be in partnership and support others in a transformative experience in coaching. So we have that program that happens twice a year in the spring and the fall. And then we have the Applied Somatics course, which Jennifer mentioned, that usually happens about once a year. And that course is specific for coaches who want to really integrate understanding the body and working with the body in the coaching relationship and dialogue. So, how are you really attuning to embodiment and seeing your client's body, recognizing patterns and shifts and gestures and postures and all these things that we dive into, the nitty gritty of being an embodied creature and how that impacts how we see life and how we experience life and what's possible. And then we also offer a business development course, which is, I believe, a 4-month program for, it's all virtual for people who want to take have an understanding of business. How do you market? What are the pillars, the fundamental pillars of business, and all of that? So we have that available. And then lastly, we have Lumina. Lumina is developed by Alexander Love, and he is really working with parts work. So, how do you be a parts informed human and coach? And there's 3 levels to that program.
Hmm.
Level 1 is applying it to yourself, and then level 2 and 3 is when you move into working with others.
Awesome. Okay,
Thank you.
that's great. So before this cuts off, we just want to say thank you. Okay,
Thank you.
so much. We're in our 4th season. This is episode 10, and we're thinking about going into another season and bringing all of our mentors back again. So hopefully you'll join us again soon.
Great. Thank you
Yeah,
so much.
Thank you for being here. Really appreciate the conversation.
Yeah,
thank you.
beautiful to be with you both.